Okay, trims are set at 0. Check controls. Left, right, up, down. Stabilization's off. My harness is set. Helmet and headset we're not using today. Canopy's open. Radio. Here comes Geiger. Yep. Okay, clear prop. Here comes the Verante.
So on this line, we can see that 10, 10, 10. So that's just showing you that the current is being drawn from each of the ESCs, the inverters.
All right, here we go. Brakes are released, power's coming forward.
I mean, that is one of the nice things, is you can actually speak without a headset on.
Right.
It's quite unique. So how are you finding the general handling?
So yeah, it's all very intuitive. I like the having a steerable nose wheel obviously makes for great ground handling. The controls are well damped. Force is slightly higher than I would expect, but it's nice and positive. It gives me lots of confidence that I can control the aircraft. So right now we're at idle thrust, and I'm able to taxi on that. In the discussion of what idle thrust should be, that's worth noting.
Yeah.
Which basically means you have to drag the brakes if you wanted to sell below taxi speed. I mean, at some point you're trying to take care of motors, balance that against how the taxi feels. So there's a trade there, but it's worth noting.
What other electric aircraft have you flown in the past that sort of would be comparable to this, I guess?
So there was the electric amphib that I flew back in early 2000s. Was sort of at this scale. Obviously it wasn't vertical takeoff capable, but sort of this level, horsepower level. Similarly, you know, in an amphib, you can't stop it on the water. So a similar hang up with idle power. You're always kind of moving.
Yeah.
You know, when I first got into electrics, it was a big deal to have throttle closed, not signal 0 RPM.
Yeah.
That was a big shift in the market, and it's absolutely the way to go. I think that the fact that you can command instantaneous, infinite torque isn't something that you're used to with a recip from 0 RPM, and this is definitely the way to do it. Plus, obviously, it's easier on the motors, but
yeah.
The other thing is that it's very surprisingly noticeable to other pilots that the RPM is so much lower. So again, depends on what you're trying to communicate, but if you're trying to catch eyeballs, the fact that we're idling at 400 looks more conventional, and maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. But blending in with other GA traffic is certainly a concern for the future of electric flight, right? The world's got to get used to having these things around, and odd configurations, compared to that Piper, this is an odd configuration. How much do you want to stand out, and how do you want people to respond when they see it on the ramp?
Yeah.
The first time I saw an electric aircraft was when we were setting the 3-kilometer speed record with the NXT at Oshkosh. They were in the display right before we set the record. It was a Sonex with some go-kart technology on it, but he pulled up to the hold short line to do his flight before we set the record, pulled throttle back to idle, and the prop stopped, and it caught all of our attention, right? Because no one had ever seen that before. Now it's people are more used to being around electrics, plus we all idle at some RPM above 0, but it's an interesting electric thing.
The market that this is going to fit into, so a light sport aircraft,
right?
Compared to the likes of like Joby Archer, where do you think this sits? What's your sort of view on the market in that respect?
I think the coolest thing right now about electric, specifically electric VTOLs, we're all trying to figure out what that means. Where is that market? Who's using this, right? But the fantasy of, and I say fantasy because so few of us get to actually realize it, of having some sort of a ranch that's relatively isolated, maybe even off the grid, that then you commute by air to work. Electric makes sense. I mean, you can have solar panels on your roof and you don't have to deal with keeping gas. The airplane I flew out here today, the reason I was able to purchase that airplane was the guy had a similar ranch, and keeping fuel at the airport meant that he was constantly worried about water in the gas. He had 3 engine failures associated with having water in the gas of the Bowser he had at his ranch. Wow. And that scared him enough to finally, first of all, he didn't fly back and forth to his ranch anymore, but he also sold that airplane because he couldn't deal with that risk. Solar panels on the roof, that's much easier. You don't have to deal with getting a fuel truck to show up and making sure there's not water in the bottom of the tank.
Skyfly's business model and our approach is that we're not looking to go into sort of air taxi markets. We're primarily focused on selling this to private owners. So you have this at your house,
right?
You fly it from your house to your work, wherever.
It's an incredible business model. I mean, I don't think anybody has trouble getting excited, from an imagination standpoint about that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Especially, a little bit of countryside. That's an amazing commute in the morning.
Yeah. This configuration, Canard configuration, is this something you've flown a lot before?
Yeah, so I started out my flight test career working for Burt Rutan at Scale Composites. Burt's obviously famous for sort of introducing the world to the Canard. I mean, the Wright brothers introduced the world to the Canard, but Burt sort of reintroduced it back in the 80s. So it's certainly something that I've been exposed to before, and an exciting enabling technology for little airplanes.
Yeah. And generally, the handling of Canard aircraft versus a conventional layout, do you have a preference, or do you like the sort of damp stalling of Canards, or what's your...
I think, like everything in aircraft design, it comes down to mission. There's some places where the Canard makes a lot of sense. There's other places where it doesn't. I think in situations like this, where you're relatively low speed and parasitic drag isn't dominating the drag problem, the Canard can do a lot, especially when we start talking about simplified vehicle operations and benign handling characteristics. So Canard can be very beneficial for this market space.
So the fact we've got this configuration, no rotating motors, it's as simple as it gets in terms of mechanical complexity compared to sort of tilt rotor mechanisms. What do you like that approach? Obviously, we lose some efficiency in forward flight with not having the propulsions in direct flow with the direct thrust line. What's your thoughts on that?
So a vehicle that can change shape or change mode between vertical and wing-borne flight is always been the holy grail. I think if the answer was settled, you would see a stabilization in the marketplace, or more of a stabilization in the marketplace, in the configurations that the electric vertical takeoff manufacturers are selecting. You don't see that. Part of that's because the mission's poorly defined, but part of it is because it's a really hard trade space. I think what I like about this, especially as you start to move into the lower weight vehicles, is, like you say, it's incredibly simple. And with that simplicity comes lower cost, ease of maintenance, ease of operation, and hopefully more of a customer base at that price point.
Yeah.
I think we all had the experience where we got a quadcopter or an RC helicopter for Christmas, and you start translating across your living room, and you think, man, I'm going fast enough right now. If I had just a little wing, I could save some battery power. This configuration falls naturally out of that, and I think it captures all of our imaginations, and I think it's something that people can very quickly understand with a limited exposure to vertical flight with a quadcopter platform.
We're really excited to sort of get you and your team in to take the flight testing forward. Obviously, we've been doing conventional takeoffs, we've done the hovering side. Obviously, the next big challenge for us is going from that to transitions. Does that excite you?
Well, when we talk about the holy grail of flying, we're talking about that mode transition between wing-borne flight and rotor-based flight. Everything comes down to the transition, and especially once you accept electric propulsion, multiple thrusters, a situation like this, you're forced into a digital control, and that HMI relationship, the human-machine relationship, becomes absolutely critical, which is not only the coolest flight test, but when you combine that with the vertical element, we're talking about literally the coolest problems to solve in aviation right now, and will absolutely be the heart of your program. The way the pilot interfaces with that transition will make or break this design in most of the company. So am I interested in it? Hell yes, that's the coolest stuff you guys could be doing, and you're in a very exciting moment in that story for your company.
Awesome. Well, this has been incredible. I've really enjoyed this.
I thank you for saying that. I'm enjoying it as well.
You've flown everything, really. Helicopters, fixed wing, jets. I'd say that generally electric propulsion gets a bit of quite bad stick. Obviously, batteries are limited as where they are now. But do you see the future of being electric?
I think it's hard to argue with the fact that battery technology has become incredible enabling in the last, say, 10, 15, 20 years, mostly focused on cell phones. The way that you can store energy electrically has changed so dramatically that you have to consider it in the space. How it fits into that space, I think, is still up in the air, and how much batteries can continue to improve to allow us to store enough energy on board to deal with some of the problems that fall out the other side. I think there are questions there for sure, but there's no question that the bulk of the R&D investment that's been done over the 10, 15, 20 years in aerospace has been done around electric aircraft. I have trouble believing all that work could be done and there's no products that fall out the other side. And then back to our initial point, right? The idea of the operator experience. Like, fuel is a problem. It's much easier to make electricity happen in a remote environment or whatever, some novel operating case, than to make fuel happen. And so, like, how would we not consider that? And that may create an interesting intersection that makes this vehicle the absolute best vehicle to solve that problem. Thanks, man.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I
really appreciate it. It's been a great time getting to know you, and I'm looking forward to getting you up in the air in this thing.
I'm very excited about it. Brake set. And shutdown checklist is on the back. Verante off. Geiger off.